So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay and to another custom scenario made by Froggy. And this one is perhaps the most liberal use of the Aztec tile set from Standard Medieval 2 that I've ever seen in 3rd Age Reforged, to be honest. And it's an interesting take on what the Haradrim would make their cities to look like, because the Haradrim are going to be on the defence today, and it has certainly the feeling of one of those city maps from Medieval 2 where it's quite flat. There's a lot of surface area for the defenders to potentially cover, albeit there are a few terrain features outside the settlement which may actually help them as well to funnel the attackers towards them just a little bit. But in settlements like this, I always feel as though the defenders have got quite a lot to accomplish, really, because again, they've just got so many angles that they can cover, and this is a 5v3 as well, I believe, so the attackers should have plenty of numbers with which to attack the Haradrim from multiple angles with. But I do like the little details here. I like the fact that there is a little harbour within the walls themselves, and there is a little village outside as well. It certainly gives a pretty decent feel that there is more to the settlement than just within the walls, which you don't often get with standard Medieval 2 siege maps. But we shall move on to the attackers, which is going to be Umbar today. So we've seen Harad take on Umbar before in the siege, which I dubbed Khaldun, albeit that was Umbar on the defence. This time they are going to have to try and wrest control of this settlement away from the Haradrim, which I think Froggy called KRUK MAHUR, which I will use that name because I've never heard of it, but I would assume that, that's what he has called it. So for once I actually won't have to make up a name myself from the map. So yeah, we've got Windy here, who has got some Corsair infantry with the armour upgrade as well. So they're going to be able to skirmish pretty nicely, and also they're decent makeshift light infantry as well. Some standard Corsairs in behind, which are certainly nothing special. They will struggle, especially against the upper crust of Haradrim infantry, and also the Haradrim archers, as basic as they can be, will easily be able to kill off Corsairs at range, but numbers is going to be the key here for Umbar, which is not often what they base themselves on, but this is going to have to be the way they approach things this time if they're going to have success, I think. They've got some Balagai footmen with the armour upgrade, so not the most offensive unit, but definitely solid enough to withstand a bit of a beating and act as a decent front line. Ardenheim Shield Guard, of course, the upper tier spears, so they're going to be able to withstand an awful lot of punishment, albeit Harad do have plenty of armour piercing to deal with units such as that, especially with their higher end trollmen units. Balagai pikes are going to be very useful as well. Both sides are going to have access to phalanx units. We'll see which one uses them better. It's more critical for the defenders to use them better, I would say, if they're going to have a chance. Ardenheim Shield Guard are here. They've got some siege towers. Balagai footmen and more shield guards, with plenty of pole arms here for Umbar, but not a great deal of really aggressive units. Of course, their blackguards will be able to make up for that somewhat with their very potent javelins. Also got the Naaru Sentinels, which are a really strong unit of pikes, very, very tough. And then back over here we've also got the Harbingers of Castamere, a really good heavy swordsman. So yeah, lots of defensive infantry, I would say, lots of solid infantry, but not a lot of damage dealers outside of some of the units that he has at the back. But again, numbers going to be key here more than anything else. We've got Mordor as well, played by Froggy himself, the scenario creator, so he's got some around on archers, so Harad clearly have rebelled against their masters, and now the Black Númenóreans and Orcs are going to come to bring them to heel. Moran on halberdiers and archers. We've got some orc fodder at the front, more Moran on infantry. Got some Minas Morgul Chosen, which again are a very tough unit of spears, but not necessarily the best unit at dealing damage. Olakai, which are good at dealing damage, but you need to use them at the right time, otherwise they'll get burnt down very quickly. Fodder, infantry, got some Temple Guardsmen and more Minas Morgul Chosen. Those armour-piercing missiles on the Temple Guard will be useful, but Harad are less dependent on that sort of thing than others. Second unit of Olakai, so this is a very elite army, this, from Froggy, I would have to say. KRUK captains, upgraded Temple Executioners are over there with some Orc Javelins as support, and then more Moranon units as well, just to round things out. And then there's a unit of Orc Maulers as well. Is this a 5v3? It could be 4v3, we'll have to wait and see. Mevin is also playing as Mordor, so he has got some Minas Morgul Chosen as well, some Orc Javelins, archers, fodder, pretty much the same sort of thing, albeit he does have a unit of Blackguard at Barad-dûr, which we've seen used to really good effect in the last battle in Ost-in-Athil. These mass-pushing units were really, really effective there, and the elves panicked in the face of that, so we shall see if the Haradrim make the same errors. We've got plenty of Moranon units. We've got Troll Drummers, which of course are actually not functional in the current version of Reforged, but they look cool. That's all that matters for a scenario like this, really. Minas Morgul Chosen. more Blackguard, plenty of upper end units as well, including Nazgul, Temple Executioners, and Temple Guard, and there's some Olag Kai as well. Then over here we have Dabaduba, who is playing as another Mordor army, Orc Fodder, Minas Morgul chosen. I would imagine it's a pretty similar fare here. Blackguard, Barad-dûr, Temple units, Morannon units, that sort of thing. Minas Morgul chosen, and then more trolls as well. So yeah, more or less the same sort of thing. And last but by no means least, we have Wojciech, who is playing as another Umbar army, Ardenheim Shield Guard, with some Corsair infantry once again, so pretty similar fare I would suggest. Belagai footmen, Corsairs, Corsair Blackguards, yeah, plenty of pirates on display. Belagai pikes, we've got some Harbingers of Castamere with some more Naru Aru, and yeah, very similar. In fact, it could be an identical army, in fact, to Windy's on the other side. So now let's have a look at the defenders. They're going to need plenty of quality, and they're going to need some good organisation if they are to be successful here. Starting off with Asa 255X, I'll just call him Asa from now on. He's got some Southron Warband. They're not the best unit stats-wise, but that armour piercing is handy. I think this is going to be a settlement as well, which does have arrow towers, which will help the defenders out a little bit. Not a huge amount, but it does, you know, every little helps in this situation. Muhard Berserkers are here, again, bit of armour piercing, but not necessarily the strongest unit stats-wise. Dismounted Serpent Guard with the armour upgrade, going to be very, very useful at carving their way through those Corsairs especially. Warband and Pikemen are on the walls. It is worth saying they don't have any siege equipment, so they will have to go up onto the walls. They won't be able to knock any of these sections down, which will help the defenders. Mr. Sneakman playing as Harad, he's got some Muhard Berserkers over here. Then we have some Dismounted Serpent Guard once again. Glorious Kazakhstan, the third defender, so they're obviously mixing and matching their positions on the field more. Serpent Guard with the armour upgrade. There's no really high tier line infantry from the attackers here today, so Harad should have an edge there. Southron Archers, Serpent Guard once again, more Warband, excuse me. There's also some unupgraded Dismounted Serpent Guard in here, interestingly enough, but that's still going to be good enough quality to deal with Morannons and Corsairs. Serpent's Fangs. Poison arrows might be useful for actually breaking up large quantities of orcs if you can use them at the right time. Champions of Nathrat are of course a real tour de force of a unit, and they will be a real problem for all of the attacking armies, but especially for Mordor, I would say, to deal with. Mordor will probably struggle with them a little bit more. Southron Archers, more Trollmen and Serpent Guard, so lots of good solid units of infantry on the front. Maybe not as many archers as Harad would have been hoping for. We'll have to wait and see on that score. More Dismounted Serpent Guard over here from Mr. Sneakman. There are some mounted units out here as well, some Hashari Shadows, which those body-piercing projectiles could be absolutely vital for Harad to equalise the odds here a little bit. And some Mumakil in support. Mumakil, generally speaking, are not really worth their weight. But they can be useful, but generally speaking they are a bit underwhelming with how they work at the moment. Champions of Nathrat are here, and then there is a glut of units in the town centre as well, including some artillery, 2 units of artillery, in fact, 2 catapults. There's also more Trollmen, more Southrons, plenty of Trollmen in fact, with some more Muhards, some Hashari, so yeah, plenty of good stuff here in the back, including some Hashari Stalks and Demons of the Desert, which as far as ranged units go, are very, very dangerous. Now the attackers are a little bit further away from the walls, so I will make a little bit of a cut and we shall rejoin when the attackers are about ready to make their assault. So the Mumakil opening up, the mounted units of the Haradrim are going to move forward and try to make some dents in Windy's army, which I think is fair enough. They need to be really careful about getting this close though, and this is the problem with the Mumakil. You can see they're already bloodied up from the crossfire of archers which is coming at them. They were actually quite lucky, I think, that the Black Guards didn't manage to get a volley off, because that certainly would have killed off some of the Mumakil at the very least. The others are just about ready to also come in here. They actually charged through pretty well there. Of course, our Blackguards do manage to get a volley off there. I'm amazed, in fact, that none of these Mumakil have fallen just yet. Glorious Kazakhstan bringing his Mumakil through these armies. So he's going to disrupt Windy, but this looks scarier, I think, than it is for Umbar. Like, they should be able to weather this storm without too many issues. I'm a little bit surprised, actually, to not see the Hashari Stalkers come in support, because this is a big distraction. You still need to meet the challenge that these Mumakil are laying down for you, and if you back this up with the body-piercing projectiles of the Hashari Stalkers, I think you'd be onto a real winner there. But unfortunately the Hashari Stalkers have been held back, which is fair play. There's actually 2 Mumakil units here. The other one heading over towards Mordor, but you can see one of the Mumakil has now fallen, And the longer they stay in combat with these spears, the worse it's going to be for them. Getting some of those melee attacks is hard to actually make the Mumakil attack like that. They're a very finicky unit, but when they do tremendous damage. Unfortunately, it is only against Corsairs, but still plenty of damage being done. And now, as we can see, the frame rate struggling a little bit under the weight of all of these unit models. The other unit of Mumakil going through Froggy's Mordor army, which some of Froggy's more elite units are made of sterner stuff than what Windy has at his disposal. Needs to be a little bit careful as well. Plenty of arrows. Lots of arrows are going to hit the Mumakil because they're such a big target as well. I don't really subscribe to that theory being all that useful against trolls, to be honest with you. I think in practice it doesn't really work so well against them, but against Mumakil, because they are massive, pretty much the entire volley is going to hit them, which is going to burn through their hit points very, very quickly. You can see here the Mumakil are routing, charging through the line. Not a huge amount of damage done there to Froggy's army, you would have to say. A little bit more perhaps done to Windy, but again, a lot of that was centered around some of his more basic units, so he won't mind too much. More of an annoyance than anything else, more something which has made their advance just a little bit more awkward. But regardless, we shall resume the cut now, because it's quite clear that the shadows are not going to move forward at the moment, and we'll rejoin when the walls are being assailed. Not a huge cut here, as the South Front archers are going to start opening up with their bows onto the initial assault here from Froggy, which, to be fair, is only a couple of units of morale on. He's just going to set up his siege equipment. I hope that he learnt his lesson from the assault on occupied Tarnost, where he left his siege tower all alone and dithered a little bit too long before installing them on the walls and ultimately using them, because it led to some of his siege equipment burning down and ultimately being useless, and that really did hurt the attacker's chances on that occasion. You can afford to be a little bit more blasé, I would say, in a 5v3, unlike that 4v4, but still, you don't want to be giving your opponent any sort of freebies from that perspective. So Wojciech is going to be attacking from this angle. Thank you very much, announcer. But this is good. Trying to stretch the defenders, go cover as much of the walls as you can with your own units. Oh boy. This is going to be a consistent problem, isn't it? You hate to see it. But yes, the Morano infantry, it looks like they are actually going to try and attack the walls immediately. They won't get terribly far against dismounted Serpent Guard. Morano infantry strength comes from the fact that there's quite a lot of them and they're okay as far as infantry units goes, but dismounted Serpent Guard, even without the armour upgrade, are going to be far too strong for these basic units of orcs. Dismounted Serpent Guard, one of their best features is the fact they're actually pretty damaging for this class of unit. They don't have quite the same level of armour or shields as their equivalents from the Western Kingdoms, but those scimitars do have a sting to them. And Froggy, he's only sending forward a few units of infantry. The rest of his army is a little bit too far behind for my liking. If you're going to mount a genuine assault right now, you're going to need more of your units closer. And this is a good opportunity actually for the defenders to fill their boots with some kills, kill off a few of these Morano infantry without too much of a response from the attackers. And they should be in a good place if they're able to do that. Dabaduba's Mordor army, on the other hand, is going to be moving up over here. Mevin is also coming forward. So this part of the settlement, the front gate, and also the western wall is going to be where the large Mordor armies are going to be attacking, and then Umbar will potentially be trying to circumvent the defences. They have managed to clear a bit of a spot on the wall, and this is, again, a part of their strength because of their numbers. They are able to do this, but the problem is, you can see, yeah, the damage they were taking from the arrows and from the infantry unit they were facing off against meant they were always going to rout. So not a great deal of ground made up there, and the Serpent Guard will be very happy with that performance, and this is where these arrow towers are going to be very useful. Of course, the attackers don't have the luxury of trying to destroy these either without any sort of siege equipment. This is where the defenders could potentially gain. And here we have some upgraded dismounted Serpent Guard, so if they didn't stand a chance against the regular Serpent Guard, they're certainly not going to stand a chance against the upgraded variant. So again, Froggy not learning his lesson here, and this unit of Morano infantry will ultimately suffer the same fate, if not worse, than the unit that was also repelled from the other wall as well. So they are there, the arrow towers blazing as well. going to be continuing to fire, as well as into some of these units back here, which are taking a bit of damage. Corsair infantry starting to open up. They're going to send a few volleys over the walls before ultimately being used as light infantry, which they may actually be more useful as light infantry in this situation. Orc fodder moving forward as well. I really doubt they're going to achieve much if they just go straight in for the gates there, but we shall see. This ram over here heading towards the gate, so they actually avoided going up this snaking path, and they're going to go along the wall, which pathfinding wise is better, but it also means that you're going to open yourself up for a longer encounter with these arrow towers, which will kill off a few more of your soldiers. Fortunately, Mordor have plenty of reserves. Meanwhile, Haradrim continuing to fire as well with their own Southron archers. I wonder what they're firing at. Choice of target could be key here. The Haradrim need to use their archers to good effect, and I would say from shooting into the front of Moran on infantry, it's maybe not the wisest use of this ammunition. You will get some kills, but ultimately it's not really efficient. This unit of Moran on infantry is back, I think. They're already wavering though, and once again the arrow tower opening up and the Serpent Guard continuing to show their dominance against these basic units of orcs. Southron Warbander here. The ram has been pushed to one side. This unit of Moran on infantry is still fighting on actually, which considering the amount of damage they've taken is fairly impressive, but yeah, between the arrow towers and the Serpent Guardsmen, simple enough. More siege towers, is it? I would assume this is going to be over here, and indeed it is. They're going to try and get up onto this wall now, I would assume, Mordor. Moran on infantry. They will, even with the AP, the Southron Warband, and certainly not going to be as good as the Serpent Guard at dealing with the Moran on infantry, but they should still have what it takes when you consider that they're going to be backed up by the arrow towers. It's the Blackguard of Barad-dûr actually, which are manning the ram as well, so they could charge in here. There's not a great deal of infantry back here. There's some berserkers, there's some warband. There's not a huge amount of infantry actually on the streets themselves. They could pour in through the gate and try and put pressure on Harad that way. Corsairs pushing up with the ram, just going to open up this gate. Maybe it's time for me to bite the bullet and finally disable this guy. It was so nice in that replay where he was bugged. More siege towers. I mean, they've got plenty of ways to get up onto the walls. Yeah, this guy's got to go. I'll have to make a note of that, and we shall have to remove the announcer files from the game, I think. Once and for all, we shall deal with this problem. Orc javelins are going to be throwing some javelins in through the gate, trying to soften up this defensive position. Glorious Kazakhstan just standing there and taking it as well, which is a bit of a mistake. Ultimately, you do need to try and take cover from this sort of thing. You can't afford to just take this on the chin. Yes, it's only Southron units, but when you consider that some of them are pikemen and could be really, really useful for holding the line later on, it's really not what you want to be seeing. And by doing this, you will also force Mordor to try and come in on ground level as well, which has Harad. You should be ready to try and take advantage of. Some shock infantry getting up onto the walls here. Orc maulers, they should do a little bit more damage than the Moran on infantry that came before, but ultimately these dismounted Serpent Guard should still be more than enough to deal with low defense shock infantry like that. And then this Mordor force over here also starting to put pressure onto the walls. Moran on infantry up here, you can see they are faring a little bit better, but they are surrounded by all sorts of AP as the troll drummers continue to bang on their drums. Temple execution is on the way. Have they decided to push in here yet? No, they haven't, which is probably wise. When a little bit more support comes forward, however, I would suggest trying to flood in through the streets on ground level over here might be the way to go. And then over here, another unit of Moran on infantry and Orc fodder actually is going to try its luck against these upgraded dismounted Serpent Guard, who so far have been a very effective unit. The attackers really struggling to make any ground up against these strong Haradrim units. Meanwhile, Umbar. Jesus Christ. This guy. And he's still talking. Unbelievable. He's still going. Are you quite finished? I'll give you a few seconds just in case you want to chime in again. No? Okay. Corsairs, not going to do very well against Trollmen, as would be quite obvious, but Wojciech is putting a little bit of pressure onto these walls, but he's going to need to do more than just send forward basic units of Corsairs, and unfortunately this looks like a bit of a classic error in judgment. He's just sending forward his low-tier rubbish, basically, and they're going to achieve nothing. Like, there's no quality here. Harad are going to absolutely slaughter them. He's going to gain nothing by sending those Corsairs in on their own, and he's sequestering away his better units back here for later, but numbers are your best friend for the attackers on this occasion, and throwing your numbers away like this is not going to help you in the long run. But fortunately, these are the sort of errors which can be atoned for in this sort of battle, because in a 5v3 you have a little bit more margin for error. Corsair infantry are going to fire directly through that gate into the south front pikemen, so once again Harad, and it's actually Mr. Sneakman this time around, has got his south front pikemen exposed, and he's just allowing them to be shot, but I should imagine he will move them promptly.
The enemy's ram is through our gates.
Another gate falls, this time on the side where Windy is attacking from. Let's go and have a look over there as well. The siege tower is burning. Not too surprising to see at least one example of this in a settlement that has so many arrow towers. Belagaya footmen are over here taking a bit of damage. Is the siege tower really a trick? Relatively obvious what they want to do with it, but plenty of Trollmen and champions of Natrat over here, so Umbar may have a few difficulties in winning in terms of sheer quality, but Windy also doesn't actually have that many ways to get around those defences over here anymore because of the loss of his siege tower, which is quite interesting. He did send a siege tower over here, and he is trying a bit of concentration of force against this unit of dismounted Serpent Guard here. Plenty of spears, including the very strong Ardenium spears, but is this going to be a good thing? A unit of javelins over here would work wonders. Fortunately for Windy, there aren't really any other units here that can be utilised. Over here, meanwhile, got some Southern archers that look like they've just run out of ammunition on top of the gates that lead into the inner port. And then I'm not sure why the frame rate is struggling so much, but there you are. Moran on infantry over here. Windy has also sent a unit of Corsair infantry to try and help out. This one unit of Serpent Guard is still doing a really good job, but eventually the numbers and the pressure here from the attackers should start to pay dividends for them. That would be my opinion. This is going to be part of why the frame rate is struggling so much. Mordor really coming in a big way now. Froggy sending forward his Olag High. He's got Temple Executioners in there, as well as plenty of numbers from the Moran units and the fodder. And Harad, once again, we're seeing when the attackers really do come forward in force, a lot of times the defenders are not prepared for them to be that aggressive, and Harad are doing okay at holding on here, but I feel as though a big part of that is going to be due to the support of this unit over here, in particular the Shari Shadows, those clear projectiles ripping through the blob of Mordor forces, but it is also making holding on to this front gate a little bit more difficult. Belagaya pikemen fighting down here in the pits as well against the Southron archers. Their formation is somewhat compromised, and if those champions of Nafrat get down onto ground level, they will get finished off very, very quickly. We make our way around to the other side as well. It didn't go very well up those ladders for Mordor. Doesn't look like it's going very well for Mordor just in general over here. Those Minas Morgul Chosen are routing, which is never what you want to see, because they're one of the Mordor units that does have decent morale. Morale on infantry still facing off against the armour-piercing Southron Warband, and all of the support that the Haradrim units are getting is proving to be vital here. All of this damage is going to add up over the long run. We've also got Temple Executioners over here without the armour upgrade, this unit, but they are of course a very strong unit of heavy swordsmen, and the dismounted Serpent Guard are rightly struggling against the cream of the Black Numenorian crop. Olag High going up the siege towers. It's always funny to see trolls going up siege towers and ladders because it looks proportionally wrong. But here are the Olag High now. And they are going to start supporting the Mordor units up on the walls. It's going decently for Mordor, I would say, but they can't afford to hang around here for too long because they are taking consistent damage. And this attack did not go well. In fact, you can see there's plenty of Blackguard Barad-dûr over here which have perished. That is really bad news for Mordor, actually, because we've seen how effective that unit can be. And on this occasion, not so effective at all. Wojciech has sent forward his Balagai units, but still the Southron's holding on. Not enough quality being committed forward still, I don't think. He's got his units lined up. He needs to send forward something a little bit more, because when you're talking about dealing with Trollman, it's going to be very, very hard for you to make any inroads unless you've got quality on the front line. Either that, or just send forward really token forces and bide your time and wait, because he does actually have a pretty decent defense arrayed against him here, so if he wants to wait, that's fine. Because eventually some of these units would have to be siphoned off to try and help on the other fronts, and that's when he could potentially strike, but it's a bit of a halfway house for him at the moment. Meanwhile, MAHUR Beast Hunters firing their javelins in support of these Trollman units. Bit of a clash of the Titans over here between the Trollman and the Harbingers. Harbingers, however, have a little bit more going for them in this kind of battle, so some javelin support would not go amiss, but they're currently going after the Balagai pikes and doing a decent job of it as well. These champions of Nafra are actually in a pretty bad fight for them, because these Naru Sentinels, if they can keep their formation in good order, they should be able to keep those Trollmen champions at arm's length. Plenty of Javies being utilised. There isn't a great deal of reinforcements over here for Harad, so this is pretty much all she wrote, and indeed Corsair Blackguards in from behind as well are going to rip through these Trollmen, going to make very, very quick work of them. And that is, however, Windy's General. Umbar's morale generally is pretty good, but considering how Corsair heavy they are, I'm not actually sure that's going to be accurate on this occasion. These walls have seen plenty of combat now. Harad still hold on to them, but it's been a bloody encounter indeed. Trollmen again being committed to try and help with that situation. I mean, this is a... I mean, it's really bad for Mordor, this, honestly, because those Hashari shadows have clearly done the business here. There is a blanket of orc corpses on the ground. Harad have managed to hold on to this gatehouse, and not only that, but they're now reinforcing it with Trollmen. The Southrons are still standing, and that's really bad for Mordor, because that is a ton of damage that has been done. They've still got a few units as well that they can send in support should the need arise. Temple Guard are firing into the catapult. I mean, they're not going to be able to destroy the catapult with those projectiles. They could kill the crew off, I suppose, but... maybe he's panicking a little bit. He needs to try and do some sort of damage. Oof, frame rate over here still struggling a little bit. We've got some Uruk Captains up on the wall, so that will demand a bit of a response. 111 dismounted Serpent Guard coming over here to try and help shore things up. Those Uruk Captains are armor piercing, of course. Gives them a little bit more bite. I have to say, I think Harad have done quite well so far, but there's plenty more where that came from the attackers. Numbers wise, they can afford to take a few losses. Trollman struggling a little bit, Harbingers are still here, more and more Corsairs are also joining the fray. Corsair infantry that are out of ammunition, 168 of them. Individually no much for the Trollmen, of course, but it's not a fight of individuals, this. Champions of Nafrat getting backed up as well by the MAHUR Beast Hunters now. They are armor piercing in melee as well, like many of the Haradrim units are. Victory seems certain for the Sentinels. I mean, the Sentinels are doing really well, but there's only so many of them. They could have their formation buckled by the application of some good numbers here from Harad, and I think Windy sees that, which is why he's trying to shore things up with some Corsairs. You can see there the Hashari Shadows have come over here as well to try and do a bit more damage, seeing perhaps the danger that this Umbar force is presenting to them. The other Umbar force as well is now also presenting much more of a threat. This is a little bit more like it from Wojciech, perhaps seeing that his time is now. Mordor is struggling a little bit down on the south, so he needs to try and make something happen, and he has sent forward his Harbingers. He sent forward a big wave of units. Plenty of Black Numenorians over here, and that's going to be far too much for the Southrons to deal with, so it's going to need the Trollmen to come in and bail them out. The Arrow Towers continue to do their work as well, slowly but surely adding to the kill counts. Champions of Nafra, 84 of them, that is a real problem potentially for Umbar to try and deal with. There's still some Corsair infantry and Balagai pikes that can be committed, and Wojciech may very well need to do that, because the assault needs to continue. Corsair Blackguards doing well up on this wall. Not many Southrons left over here. On the front gate, I mean, Froggy does still have units over here. Well, I say that, Mevin still has units over here. Froggy less so. He still has a few units that he is still committing. Supporting the KRUK captains now is going to be a unit of Minas Morgul chosen. So once again, plenty of pressure coming Harad's way. Can they repel this attack once again? We shall have to wait and see. Eventually, I think the numbers are going to tell and Harad will have to pull back, but if they can do enough damage before that happens, they could be onto a winner here. Southron archers are here. Mordor, KRUK captains and temple executioners, so they are still doing some good things on this side. Trying to push in. They come down from the walls now and are trying to attack in from the side of the force which is responsible for holding onto the gate, and with temple executioners and with Olag High there, these Serpent Guard are going to struggle a little bit, and this is a good opportunity this for Dabaduba. He's got his Moran on infantry in and around. Mevin is here as well. Mevin's actually got quite a lot of his units marching through here. So yes, it's only Orc fodder, it's mostly basic units, Moran on infantry. The Blackguard are a little bit more special, but that's more because of other things. Demons of the Desert are here. They are slicing right through those Blackguard of Barad-dûr there, seeing an opportunity to get some good kills. Plenty of them. They need to do something about this river of orcs, which is now rampaging through this part of the settlement, because they undoubtedly are trying to go to the aid of Wojciech and get his Umbar units also into the settlement. And the more and more of these attacking infantry units that get into the settlement without taking substantial damage, the less likely a defending victory is going to be. They've done a lot of damage to the attackers in these outer reaches, but I'm questioning whether it's going to be enough damage here in the long run. Javelins from on high from the Orc Javelins, and that's going to lead to this unit of Serpent Guard routing. So it's taken a little while, but ultimately over here on the western wall, the attackers have now gone into the settlement. And now's the time where Harad really need to be looking to retreat and consolidate around the town centre, I think. Can they do that? This is often a good time for the attackers to catch units as they retreat. They've done really well from the front gate, Harad, but elsewhere it's a little bit more questionable. I think Windy's done a good job over here at least holding the attention of all of these Haradrim units. Beast Hunters are still struggling. He's still got pikes, he's still got harbingers. Yes, he doesn't have much of a force left anymore, but enough of one that he cannot be ignored, and that's going to be a problem for Harad, because like I said, I really think they do need to consolidate themselves at this point. Hashari are there, of course they're Blackguards, more Hashari are on the way back, so it is a chaotic fight which generally favours the attackers. There's the dancing swords of the Hashari. Very strange bug, that one. The Hashari turning around and they are trying to get into the Corsair Blackguards, using their throwing knives as well on them. I don't know if they still have ammunition left, but regardless, they are a more substantial threat in melee than the standard Corsair infantry, so it's fair enough. And they do need to deal with Windy's army quickly if they are to retreat and put up a good defence of the TC. He's still got some Corsairs on these walls over here as well. There's actually still some substantial Haradrim infantry over here, which the Corsairs are not going to be able to deal with. They will find themselves killed, but just got to buy them a little bit of time, that's all. Ardenheim Shield Guard will certainly do that. They just need to buy time. A catapult. And it is this catapult as well from Asa. Another general falls. That's bound to be the other Umbar general, in fact. Fighting up on the walls against all sorts of nastiness from the Haradrim for a little while now. And Mevin is making a play for the TC. Oh, I see, he's not using Flaming Shot. That's a bizarre choice. Flaming Shot would be really, really useful. But it doesn't really matter because he does send this unit of 63 Moran on infantry routing. Anyway, we don't want to waste a volley from those Demons of the Desert if you can help it. Does he? I don't think so. That looked like a blank shot. What's going on here? Those sound effects seem to be a little bit all over the place. Regardless, Blackguard of Barad-dûr are over here. Orc Javelins. They did actually manage to catch Mr. Sneakman's Demons of the Desert, which is a really good catch because they can be such a devastating tool in the late game. But Mordor, they are onto the city streets now, which is a bit of a problem. Some of these Haradrim units unable to get back to the TC. Not terribly important that they managed to do so with the Southron archers of all things, but still. worth bearing in mind. Troll drummers still here. Do the Haradrim have anything left of note here? Nazgul coming to the aid of Umbar, as well as plenty of fodder and Moran infantry, so plenty of numbers over here. Trollman still doing their best, but ultimately Wojciech's Umbarim are now going to be able to get into the city to join up with the Orcs, which are already here. Again, it's been fairly taxing on Umbar to get through here, but I'm not sure from a defending perspective whether it's been quite taxing enough. I think they needed to do a little bit more damage. There goes another attacking general. The more generals they lose, especially from a Mordor perspective, that could prove to be more and more of an issue. Corsair infantry on the way in now. Yeah, this Haradrim defense has certainly got a very low shelf life at this point. The Hashari fighting against the Naru Sentinels, fighting a losing battle, but potentially those arrow towers will kill off a few more of them. Let's see what's happening with Windy's army. It looks as though the Haradrim have managed to deal with things over here. The Hashari certainly earning their keep. Hashari Stalkers are in there as well, in fact. So yeah, Umbar ultimately over here have been dealt with by all of these Hashari. And they should be getting back to the town centre now, because that's the kind of unit which could make a real difference in the late game as well. When there's less missiles flying around, a unit like the Hashari can be really, really impressive. And light armour being one of their main weaknesses after all. Corsairs, victory is a distinct possibility. And I think that's more to do with the Black Numenorians that are fighting alongside them, and probably Windy's got a unit of 20 javelins down there, which is really helping them out against this cluster of Serpent Guard. Let's go and have a look on the other side of the city harbour to see what's going on here. This unit of Minas Morgul Chosen being torn limb from limb by Trollman and Southron, so really trying to make sure that Froggy isn't going to have any part to play in the late game here are the defenders, but maybe this is to the detriment of other areas of the defence. They've constantly had the beating of the Mordor forces that are over here, but they don't need to chase Froggy anymore, I don't think. They need to get more of these units back. They need to consolidate at this point. Because if they can do that, if they can set up a good defence here in the TC, they've got 3 decent choke points that can be utilised. And there you can see Moran archers trying to fire in, but they're not going to win a skirmish fight against the Serpent's Fangs by any means. It's a skirmish fight which will go very poorly for them, in fact. And those poison arrows will also mean that any units that are over here will also rout off pretty quickly. Demons of the Desert using their javelins on units that they really shouldn't be. Asa is, I have to say, a player that I don't recognise, so he could be slightly newer to the ins and outs of the game. He's played like a player that's played Medieval 2 before, I would say, but perhaps he's not quite aware of how important the Demons of the Desert can be and why you shouldn't be using them on units of 6 fodder. Another group of Haradrim which were trying to get back, but ultimately were not able to. Again, it's not the most important unit, but these numbers could be really telling as the battle goes on, and the more and more of these Southrons that they lose, again, the less and less likely a defending victory is going to be, I would suggest. Blackguard of Barad-dûr, victory is almost a certainty. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Troll drummers. There's some Uruk captains roaming around, so yeah, Mordor certainly now really making their presence felt on the outer walls, and from the front here, the south wall, where Froggy's attack was repulsed earlier, they may live to regret staying here for too long, Harad, getting a little bit too greedy with the kills they were getting, thinking they were perhaps more secure than they actually were. Trollman are now taking damage from the Orc Javelins, certainly a very efficient engagement there. I mean, in melee the Orc Javelins are going to get ripped apart by Trollman, but it's not good. They've got Serpent's Fangs over here. I mean, Harad could turn around and do some good damage here against this little force from Dabaduba, but that also means that these units will not be heading back to the TC, which means they won't be there to potentially meet an Umbar advance either. A potentially different problem, but it's an interesting fight, this. It is becoming much more chaotic throughout the city, which often favours the attackers, but if the defenders can make this work for them, if they can get in some really good engagement positions, this could yet go their way. A lot of it will also depend on what sort of resources they have left. There's actually some Haradrim here. There's one dismounted Serpent Guardsman who is in the middle of all of these Morannon archers, making a nuisance of himself. Probably not going to last for too much longer as those Southron Pikes run away back to the TC. Nazgul in front of what's left of Mevon's forces. The Umbaran are going to head over here, potentially to link up with what remains of Windy's army. And they're going to attack from the eastern side of the TC. So the Noose Titans. Windy is still fighting down here though, I believe. It's been certainly a very bloody fight. Plenty of Pyrrhic victories for both sides throughout these fights, but again, that is going to favour the attackers more with how much more they have in reserve compared to the defenders. There's a fair amount of green coming this way though. Morannon archers, so yeah, this is Sleepman getting his champions of Nathrat away. 54 of them could play a big part in the late game. And again, they've committed their Trollman of Harad over here, but shooting into the backs of these units with the Serpent's Fangs, but they're not the most damaging archer that there is. They're more of a defensive archer than anything else, but applying some pressure at least. These Trollman individually will be really good against these heavy spears and these great shield infantrymen, but there are some more impressive units around here as well, like KRUK captains and temple executioners, so there's a limit to how much the Trollman can accomplish all on their lonesome. Some dismounted Serpent Guard also over here with the Trollman, as they try and deal with the shooter of Minas Morgul chosen as quickly as they possibly can, but I'm not the biggest fan of the shape of this engagement for the defenders. Crimson banners still flying though, and there are still a few archers. Orc javelins are up here. Serpent's Fangs getting into melee, finishing off some Orc javelins, and they will continue to chase them, I'm sure. Serpent's Fangs very impressive in melee as well as being very useful at range, and there's still reserves out there for Mevon, which is the scary thing. Froggy may well have been the fall guy in this fight, but his allies have certainly reaped the benefits. Witcher getting his army ready, perhaps waiting for what remains of Windy's force to join up with him, and then they shall also mount an assault on the TC. I mean, to be fair, there's not actually an attack coming this way anymore. It's more like the dregs of Mevon's army being sent over here, but plenty of them were lost in the pursuit of this. Still has a force over there as well, but not much, so it's interesting this. Definitely still all to play for, even if I do think that the attackers are in a pretty decent spot here. A lot of it could have to do with how much resources the defenders still have at their disposal as well. The KRUK captains proving their worth, really helping out, and it could be that the greed from the defenders trying to kill more and more here on the outer walls is showing like part of being a defender is knowing when to pull back and when your position is compromised. Especially in a really open plan settlement like this, which is really big. Eventually you're going to get flanked, and you need to know when that's going to happen and try to counteract that by retreating before it happens, and unfortunately I don't think the defenders were really paying as much attention to that as they really should have done. Morannon archers from Froggy into the settlement, a few more arrows from the Orcs being utilised, Minas Morgul's chosen, Orc javies. We hear these Orc javelins are actually routing as a result of being pressured by the Serpent's Fangs. There are some Temple Executioners over here, but only 4 of them, so the Serpent's Fangs will be able to deal with them. That's actually one of the Haradrim generals there, carrying the torch and 2 scimitars. And then over here, not much remains of this Haradrim defence on the streets now. Trolls will be able to break up those pikes as well. So finally, this southern area of the settlement is going to be secured by Mordor and Umbar, and Harad will perhaps forcibly now have to go back to the TC. Still all kinds of arrows. Still these arrow towers could be playing their part, slowly but surely chipping away at the manpower of the attackers. The longer they stay here in the outer reaches of the settlement as they move towards the TC, of course, they will cease to be a factor in this fight. Round archers running. Still 25 Serpent's Fangs over here. They really should have continued running. And that's the reason why. The general that we saw just a moment ago has perished, and I don't know why they doubled back, because these Uruk captains are in better condition than the Serpent's Fangs, and they have support nearby. So yeah, the Serpent's Fangs probably should have fallen back to the TC, and a unit of their calibre would have been really useful for the final stand as well. I think at this point the defenders have been a little bit too wasteful with these units and haven't managed to safeguard their manpower enough. Just taking stock, I mean, the catapults could still win the defenders this battle. It could still be such an important tool as Mevon's units move forward. There's 65 Temple Guard there. But we shall see now whether this artillery can do the business. No is the answer. The ultimate roll of the dice, medieval 2s, catapults, trebuchets, and the like. And on this occasion, the artillery gods do not smile on Harad for the time being. Potentially soon. Over here, Mordor continuing to try and chip away at the manpower of the defenders in the TC. They are now consolidated. Moran and archers continuing to fire in, only 30 of them. The amount of DPS they're going to get downrange is going to be relatively minimal, but every little helps. Hopefully Tesco don't sue. What have we here? Also blackguards from Windy. And this is the issue. I mean, eventually the attackers are going to have to put themselves in harm's way of the artillery. There's no real getting around that. Someone is going to have to bite the bullet and just go right in for it. Wojciech is going to attack from the east, as we said. It's going to be more of a token force attacking from the south, I think, and the main assault may very well be coming from the western approach once again. As the orcs continue to try and do their thing, and in fact the orcs maybe reinforcements are not all that close by, so they're going to try and deal with this unit of 13 round on archers quickly and then possibly retreat, which is not the worst idea. Deal with the potential ranged threat before it truly manifests itself. And there they go. A good little catch. Certainly not battle defining, but these sorts of things do add up, and Harad will need more of that. More bits of good news, because Mevon's Mordor force, this is probably the scariest aspect of the attackers that still remains. Plenty of heavy spears which are capable of taking punishment. Temple Guard, which I think still have a bit of ammunition. Temple Executioners are around here somewhere as well, I think. Or is that just Temple Guard? It might just be Temple Guard, actually. Still strong in melee, though. And plenty of numbers as well. It's not an insurmountable army, though, that's the thing. Troll drummers continuing to bang their drums. Uruk captains, 32 of them. What have we here? Hashari. Still some, of course, their blackguards as well. Let's go up to ×2 speed, actually. We are now into the final 10k frames, so this is going to be, for all the marbles, we're into the final phase. Will they take the town centre or not? Having a look at the percentage of kills. So yeah, Harad have lost 2% more, which is not really a good sign. Getting a little bit greedy. You can't afford to be losing Serpent Guard like this by getting too greedy. When you're behind in this situation as defenders, you're going to need something like your artillery to do the business. Mevon is moving forward now. I mean, it may be worthwhile to actually keep this unit here and try and blob Mordor up. And in so doing, you can then use your catapult to really good effect. Hopefully he's, yeah, again, he's not using the flaming shot, which is a bit of a shame, but he is actually scoring some good hits regardless. And with the generals falling like flies earlier on, morale shocks are definitely a possibility. It's also much more difficult to keep track of the projectiles from the catapults when they're not using flaming shot. You have to look for the impact rather than follow the flaming boulder as it streaks across the sky, but he is scoring some good blows here on the Municipal Guild Chosen. And that is the unit he needs to deal with, because they are going to be capable of taking some good punishment. Firing into the Serpent's Fangs, but this is one of the more heavily armoured Haradrim unit, so they will be able to take it better than most. They're going to send over here Mr. Sneakman turning around potentially to meet the challenge of Umbar, and this is because from the south there isn't really much worth pointing the catapult in that direction for. The Hashari should be able to handle things from that direction. And it is going to come down to the RNG, really, that the catapult decides to knock out. If the catapult is capable of laying down enough damage, potentially morale shocking the enemy as well, the defenders could very well be onto a winner. But if it isn't, then just through sheer strength of arms and numbers, the attackers should have what it takes to see themselves over the line. Morale on archers. The boulders continue to find their marks. Demons of the Desert, do they still have ammunition? I don't believe they do. I mean, they're still strong in melee. Not as strong as the regular Trollmen, nor especially the Champions of Nafrat, but they still have a part to play in melee. Certainly not the sort of thing that can be taken lightly. Poison arrows now being utilised. Mordor's morale certainly being tested. Fortunate for them that they're using some of their units that actually do have good morale. The Serpent's Fangs. Defeat is a distinct possibility for the Minas Morgul Chosen, as the Demons of the Desert come in with their twin-bladed swords. Ooh, and now Mordor also attacking from the south. Will the Hashari and the Serpent Guard be enough? Of course, their Blackguards moving in, morale on infantry. Blackguard of Barad-dûr, but not in enough numbers that they can actually push back. The Uruk Captains are in here as well as the Troll Drummers, but I don't think there's going to be enough. Yeah, there's Champions of Nafrat in here, so this really is just going to be a force which is designed to occupy these Haradrim defenders. And Harad will be victorious over here. Now, I think Wojciech, he's dragging his heels a little bit. His allies are in battle now. He needs to get into melee and start making something happen. Because if he doesn't, he's going to have left it too late. And there you can see the Hashari doing some good damage there to the Ardeniva Shield Guard before they get into melee. Not tons of kills, but softening them up for the melee. Hashari Stalkers are here as well. Mercifully for the attackers, out of ammunition. And what have we here? Ooh, come on, voice, hold yourself together. Demons of the Desert struggling a little bit. I actually think the attackers need to show a little bit more urgency here, because if they continue to drag their heels across the board, they could find that Harad actually blunt their attacks too much. These Serpent Fangs are continuing to take a lot of damage, and that's because there are plenty of Morannon archers shooting at them. They're tough, but can they really afford to just sort of stand here like this? They're going to try and break these units over here, and they're succeeding at it as well. The support around the Uruk Captains is starting to run away. The overwhelming odds, the fear-causing effect of the Trollmen, the poison arrows also proving too much for the rank and file of Mordor. Victory seems certain, only a fool could lose this battle. Yeah, 41 Champions of Nafrat, that's going to be a tough thing to overcome. Hashari are there. Morannon infantry also. I would assume that's probably Froggy's army. Or javelins. Morannon archers are there. No, it's not Froggy actually. Someone else, so Windy I would assume. Mevan's army continues to try and put the pressure on. The Demons of the Desert and depleted Serpent Guard try their best to hold Mevan's forces at bay. What's happening over here with the Umbarim? All of these Hashari continuing to do their work, but are there pikes in there? Belagaya pikemen, only 14 of them. That might not be enough. Victory seems certain, only a fool could lose this battle. Yeah, there's simply too many Hashari. It's not, all of a sudden it's looking a little bit dicey, I would say, for the attackers. Mevan, I think, needs to come in like a wrecking ball. Get into the town centre and start really doing some damage, because he may have already left it too late though, because this attack has fallen apart, which means they no longer have to really hold this area down. These Champions of Nafrat don't need to be chasing these units this far though. This is the kind of unit you need to keep in your TC. Keep your defence nice and tight. shows, I mean, these Morannon archers now out of ammunition, being utilised as makeshift infantry. Harad also doing the same with their catapult crews, just getting bodies in the way. I mean, the attackers are still pulling further ahead, that's the thing. And with all of this, the attackers should still be fine, even with the southward attack falling apart and with the Umbar forces stalling in the east. From the west, they should still have enough to wipe the enemy away. Still Corsair infantry, still blackguards. Champions of Nafrat are over here finishing off that melee force. What now will they do? There's another Haradrim general behind the banner carrier. It's the sneak mans. There are actually no Naru Sentinels still in here, but their formation has been compromised and it's by the champions of Nafrat holding, so that armour won't be enough to save them. It's close this though. Battle of small margins, and I think if the defenders had been a little bit more aware of what was going on around them, and also if they were using Flaming Shot here. Like, Flaming Shot does make a big difference to the splash damage that you have, and with a catapult that can be so vital. Harad continuing to try and hold on to this front line, but it's getting a little bit more desperate from the west. Javelins are also streaking overhead. They're going to be doing damage to this unit of Hashari, which at this point you may as well commit if that's the case, because they are in broad daylight, really. Easy prey for the Orc Javelin, so you may as well commit them in. And Mevin has committed his units well, I think. He's picked his moments decently. And these great Haradrim pyramids are about to fall back under the influence of the shadow, I would suggest. Corsair infantry getting in here. The Hashari at this point are too low in numbers to stop Umbar from starting to push them back. A little bit of damage done to the settlements as well. Still blackguards over here, but Wojciech doesn't really have anything else, so it's not as if Harad have been brushed aside. It's just a few things that went wrong for them. Oftentimes, though, battles like this are decided on small margins. Defeat is almost a certainty. Serpent Guard trying their best, but Javelins. Again, taking some good hits there at the hands of the catapult, but if that was Flaming Shot, I feel as though that unit of Orc Javelins would have routed. More of these units certainly would have routed. Still 62 Temple Guard, which is going to be too much in and of themselves to actually win. And Mevin is now going to double back and attack from the south again, I think. Going to exploit the defenders' lack of units at this point to cover multiple angles. Corsair infantry. It's going to be stopped dead in its tracks by the champions of Nafrat, you would suggest, but all Umbar really needs to do is occupy units at this point, and Mevin's army will be enough to see his team over the line. But an enjoyable battle. I like the Aztec architecture being used as well. If any of the cultural groups in Middle-earth was going to use that, it would be the Haradrim, I think. Possibly the Black Numenorians as well. Two of them, it makes a little bit more sense. Like Rune, I don't really think it fits the aesthetic of Rune per se. A little bit more Middle Eastern and Persian. I always got the impression from them. Yeah, these champions of Nafrat again proving themselves to be a really strong unit in this battle. Good matchups though against Umbar and Mordor. They're exactly the kind of armies which they do tend to do quite well against. More catapult shots coming in. Lancer forces now evenly matched. These Serpent Guard. The Serpent Guard as well have done really, really well in this battle. It perhaps would have been a slightly different story if they were faced with something like the Alcarondas Legion, but considering they were up against only the very basic units, they've shown what their real strength is, carving their way through cheap units, which they can do very, very nicely. But Javelin's continuing to fire away, and they've pretty much brought those Hashari down. Another small example of the things which have added up to be the reason why, really, the defenders are ultimately going to lose this fight. Yeah. 5% the difference, that will probably end up being 6 or 7 by the end. And now Mevin is going to pour into the town centre, and that will probably be that. Minas Morgul chosen leading the way. Dependable spears from Mordor. The Serpent's Fang is going to try and get in here to halt their progress, but there's certainly not enough of them, and they will be swallowed whole. Quite literally, if the orcs have their way, I'm sure. They will eat well tonight. Of course, our Blackguard still have a bit of ammunition. They're going to pull back a little bit. You're going to be tasting ashes, unfortunately for you. There will be no victory here. The Casbot crew has been accosted by armour-clad orcs. That's going to be the end of them. Dancing swords from the Hashari, most of them dead at this point. More units coming forward to try and break the spirit here of these dismounted Serpent Guard. Troll drummers continuing to bang on their drums, trying their best. And there we go. Surprised actually, it doesn't look like Harad have got all that much left. I wouldn't have thought they would have 2,000 frames worth of fighting still in them. Orc javelins pouring in. Proportionally though, it's not a huge amount of the attackers still left. Mevin is the only one with anything really substantial left. The other two Mordor armies have been completely gutted. Windy is completely gone. Wojciech as well has just got, it's pretty much just this one unit, so it is what it is. Dismounted Serpent Guard routing off. Ashari fighting to the bitter end in the town centre. There's still this general over here. He's actually fighting off against Moran on archers, so he will be able to kill off a few more before he inevitably falls. That crazy death animation. Not really anything for the Temple Guard to shoot at anymore. They may as well draw their long swords and get into melee. Dismounted Serpent Guard. Locked morale in the TC and around the TC. Well, in the TC. Doesn't really matter, they're not going to get back to the town centre before they get slaughtered. There's one Trollman, although this is actually the officer of the Trollman unit. The Blackguards can defend themselves in melee decently enough though. There goes the general. A javelin through the middle. Let's have a look here. 5% actually, they did manage to hold on to that margin of victory, the defenders. Certainly no shame in losing this one. 5v3s are difficult. There wasn't anything majorly wrong they did, I would say. It was just a series of things which added up. The main thing that I would say is they didn't retreat soon enough from the south gate. I feel like they saw that they were doing well there and they wanted to stay there for as long as possible, but ultimately that was to their detriment in the long run. The western wall fell, and as soon as that happened and Mevin's army was rampaging through the settlement, they really should have consolidated their forces in the town centre sooner, rather than trying to maintain on the outer walls. And they were made to pay for that in the end. And the final remnants of the Haradrim are going to be dealt with here. Still some Nazgul left alive, in fact a full unit of Nazgul, as well as those Temple Guards, so a couple of elite units surrounded by some more basic ones. But there we are. Another enjoyable custom scenario, I would suggest. Anything else? Moran and archers are firing at something. Those pikes? No, surely not. There's one South Run pikeman left alive. Luckily for him, he's up against an orc javelin, so he should live for a little while. A little while longer, I should say. Here come the Nazgul. Surely going to be the end. He did bloody up that Blackguard of Barad-dûr. There he goes. And there we go.
One which is sweet, and the other is bitter. Today, we must eat the bitter.
Interesting. But there we go. Captain Carmul the Easterling, which is an interesting name for the Mordor army. But yes, I think a well-deserved victory in the end, I would say, from the attackers. 5v3s do favour the attackers, I think, so it's less difficult for them to get what they want from this sort of situation. And it was, in some ways, very difficult as well, I would say, for the Harad, and they didn't have a huge amount of skirmishers. What ones they did have, they used very well. I would suggest that those mounted Hashari Rangers will have a huge amount of kills, as I'm sure we shall see in just a moment, because of how they slaughtered Froggy's army as he tried to force the issue from the south. But ultimately, while at the time Froggy probably wasn't too pleased with the fact that his army was dismantled, I think actually that ended up being a good thing for the attackers, because that's why the defenders hung around in the south for too long, and in the end that was part of their undoing. So let's have a little look at what did the damage for Harad. The Serpent's Fang is doing okay. The catapults, I would say, needed to do a little bit more. Part of that, of course, was the fact that one of them wasn't really using Flaming Shot, and the other one, Mr. Sneakman's, we didn't see him use it enough. Perhaps waiting a little bit too long, perhaps not making up his mind quickly enough on which avenue to hold on to. But still, hindsight is 2020. Plenty of units getting over 100. Southron Pikemen doing very well, as Phalanx units do tend to do. Demons of the Desert doing well. Oftentimes we actually see them focus down before they can be really effective, so it's nice to see them get a good kill count. Dismounted Serpent Guard, as I said, also doing very well. Over here, Demons of the Desert getting 644, that's very impressive. Champions of Nafarat showing their class. Southron Pikemen. So in these engagements, Harad did very well, but again, it just wasn't quite good enough. You really need to do really well in a 5v3 if you're going to win this sort of thing. Dismounted Serpent Guard with 450, that's very impressive for a unit of line infantry like that. Trollmen doing well, over 300 kills for them. And Dismounted Serpent Guard also not doing too badly. Down here, you can see 282 kills on those. Hashari Shadows, only 408 actually. That's maybe not as much as I was expecting, given the amount of kills that there were down there. Perhaps the Trollmen were over there as well and I just missed that, and they shared the load, as it were. Plenty of units getting over 100 though. Like I said, Harad did not play badly necessarily. It's just very difficult at 5v3, and any small issue that you can encounter can be really amplified. And I think we saw that. This is a really good example of that happening, where there were just a few little bits and pieces that Harad needed to do better, and ultimately that would have made the difference. But they weren't glaring errors, I don't think. And the attackers played it mostly by the book, I would say. They did reasonably well. I think when Mevin got into the settlement, consolidated his army and started moving around as a big goon squad, I think that was something which the defenders didn't respond as well as they could have done to. Irregardless of that, a good battle and another enjoyable custom scenario. So yeah, big thank you to Froggy for making the scenario and for sending it in, allowing me to show it. It's always nice when people do that. And a big thank you to all of the players that have been a part of this battle replay as well. Now, it's worth saying, the next video out on the channel will probably be a channel update. I think there's a lot of factors to this. I would have hoped to have done it in live stream format way before this, but I think, based on what I now know about the reality of my situation, it's better to do it in a channel update video here. So yeah, the next video will be a channel update. It'll explain the difficulties with my schedule. Now, I can stick to my upload schedule, I believe, for the most part. There may be the odd single video gap depending upon the length of time that I'm away sometimes, but we can go into the details of that in the channel update video. I'll also go into some of the future plans I have for the channel itself, but quite a few of those will probably be further future rather than sort of immediate changes. Yeah, it is what it is. The channel update will come next, and it will be one of the regular scheduled videos. So one of the two videos in the upcoming bunch will be the channel update, which isn't ideal, but it's also the only way that I can really fit everything in at the moment. So at the very least, it should be informative to people who are curious about what's going to be happening. For the schedule itself will be remaining the same, I will say. Like, that will be as it is. But there's a lot of context which I feel like people do need to hear. And if there is sort of the odd gap or something like that, then it will help for people to actually hear it from myself about why that actually is. Irregardless, that can wait to another time. I've also got a couple of other custom scenarios that I will be doing in the future as well. I've actually got a battle on Moria as well, which is going to be upcoming. It's been a while since we've seen Moria, so I think it's about time that I showed it again, and it is going to be a good versus evil siege as well. So that will probably be coming out in the next couple of weeks or so. A return to that particular battle, and there's a few other things as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.